process with EWM. Now, there are a couple of options which have been provided by SAP when it comes to returning the product back to the vendor. You can do GR reversal if you do not want to track the movement of the product within your warehouse, don't want to create any outbound delivery. You can simply reverse the GR depending upon the state of your inbound delivery. If you have not completed the put away or the UD is not done, so then you can use it. But if you want to track, you want to pick the product, you want to pack the product and then ship it out, then you should use the return to vendor scenario, either using return PO, or you can also initiate the process from EWM. And again, even though we are initiating the process from EWM, it is hitting S4 and transaction code VL60, and through which it is creating an outbound delivery. So in this process, in this session, we are not going to cover all those scenarios, but I have given some highlights over here. Now, the when it comes to return to vendor process via return PO, we make use of this process if your put away is already completed and there is no linkage of the stock, the handling unit linkage is broken with the inbound delivery, and then we want to initiate the process, right? So the first and foremost, these are the key points. So your vendor should be created as a customer, because see, generally it is an understanding, right? Because we are talking about a purchase order, right? Return PO is again a purchase order. So we will be receiving the product, and then why do we need a outbound delivery? Even though it's a return PO, but we want to ship the product outside of four walls of the warehouse, right? So if you're sending something out of your warehouse, it has to be an outbound process, and that is where the outbound delivery comes into the picture. So using the purchase order with the return flag, we will be able to create a outbound delivery. Now, because we are creating an outbound delivery and we want the operator to pick the product from a specific storage type and probably pack and ship it, so the vendor should be created as a customer. So this is the BP transaction code wherein the business partner is created, and then so this is the BP transaction code wherein there are roles. Earlier in S4 we used to have the transaction code, dedicated T code to create vendor and customer XD01, etc. Now, or MK01, etc. So now with BP, with the same number, we can extend it to different roles. That vendor can be, maybe it's also your carrier partner or a customer, right? So now we are focusing. So this is the role for vendor. Now, once you select the relevant role, and you will get the purchasing tab. Once you are, after clicking the purchasing tab, you have entered the purchase organization. This is the key point. So if you will mark this checkbox, assuming that I've already created extended this BP for a customer role as well. So if you will mark this checkbox, system will show that it wants to link this customer to this vendor. Acknowledge it. There is another checkbox if return authorization should be provided before by the vendor before you initiate the process. There is a checkbox called RMA required, but we are not using it. Now, once it is marked, we will go back to the original. Okay, I should have clicked on general data. So, so let me go back again in the BP transaction. In the general data tab, you can see, so now we are in the general data tab. So we can see the customer number and the vendor number. So depending upon your configuration of the number range, you can have the same number for all three, but it's a demo system and it's different here. Now, the previous screen which we saw earlier, wherein I marked the checkbox for return, we came by clicking the purchasing button over here. Now, since the vendor is mapped as customer, so we are good to go to use this transaction. So this is a specific document type provided by SAP for return to vendor. This is the key point. So how does system understand, like, if it is still ME21N transaction code wherein we are creating the purchase order, so system is able to differentiate between the receiving and return based on this checkbox. So once you will mark this, system will understand that, and it will fetch out this, and that this is a return process, and it will fetch out these details. So we saw the customer mapping over there. Now, how does system determine this particular document type that it has to be RL? So if you go to the MM module configuration OLME, so we can navigate using this. It's in the configuration OLME transaction code. You will jump directly over here. And if you go to the purchase order option node, within that node, you can see that we have the options to map the document type. So since we are talking about returns, come to this node, and for your plant and document type, you can map the delivery document type. So if you will map a different delivery, you can create a Z document type for whatever reason and then map it here. And based on this setup, system will determine this document type over here. Talking about shipping point. Now, it might be the scenario that you want to create a dedicated shipping point because you want to determine a different picking storage location in your outbound delivery. So what you need to do is you need to create a new shipping condition. So let me show the setup needed to determine the shipping point. So what is a shipping point? It's basically based on your business requirement. If you're shipping by rail, road, etc., that could be one grouping logic. That could be that for your regular deliveries, you have created one shipping point. For your returns, you have created another shipping point. So let's jump to these settings. Now, if you want to determine a different shipping point for your return process, you can create a specific shipping condition for that, and then using this node, you can determine different shipping point versus your the one which gets determined in your regular deliveries, outbound deliveries. So once you will do this mapping, system will be able to determine a different shipping point for returns. Once this setting is done, maybe we want that, uh, you know, for picking the product against the return, we have created, let's say, as different or dedicated storage location, and we want that storage location to be determined in your return deliveries when you're dealing with the return to vendor scenario. So if you go to the picking node, based on your plant and your shipping point, you can point to a different storage location altogether just for this process. So here you can choose and decide whether you want to pick the product from your out available for sale storage location, or from the inbound storage location, or if you have altogether created a new storage location just for return to vendor, tracking the inventory at the S4 level and in EWM also separately. But you in real time you would need a separate storage location because you can use a separate storage type altogether for RTV process. But if you have a requirement, you can also do that. Now in my delivery, system is determining ZD42, and the reason is because if you look at the customer number and the BP role, we will see that the shipping conditions are different. So you can check in the table BUT 000 the roles for which your customer or BP has been extended, because there are so many roles. So just to identify which one you should be using or you have already extended to, then you can go to the table and check the details from there. So in the customer master, if you go to the shipping tab, you can notice that the shipping condition which I mentioned here is 01. So I'll replace it with RE so that the shipping point which I'm determining should change. So two key important things: shipping point determination and your picking location determination. We have taken look at both of them. Now, so I can either create a new PO or I can just manipulate the data here. Now, one thing you will notice that because it's a return to vendor scenario, so let me try to create it from the scratch. The confirmation tab will be grayed out, but this tab will be enabled if you're dealing with the return STOs. Because in this particular scenario, when we are talking about return to vendor, we won't be receiving the product against this purchase order again. At least not for the same line item. Of course, you can use the same PO for receiving, as well, but that has to be a different line item altogether. So now again, since we started from the scratch, right now there is no shipping tab which is appearing over there. So it's important that you mark this checkbox. Then you will see that if your master data is correct, your material is extended for the sales views, etc. Now you can see the influence of the shipping condition on shipping point, and using the shipping point you can determine altogether a different storage location. So without further delay, we will just save the purchase order. Now once the purchase order is created, we will as a next step we will create a outbound delivery against it. Now once the outbound delivery is created, the important point or the question we should be asking us to ourselves is what will be the delivery document type on the EWM side against this S4 delivery document. So to create the outbound delivery document against this purchase order, we have to use VL10B. Now the thing is that even without doing the setup on EWM side, if you have done the setup which I've shown so far, if you've done it, you would be able to create a delivery document type, delivery document in S4 side, the LE delivery, we call it as LE delivery. However, the queue would fail probably if the setup is not done on the EWM side. And then we can take a look at what is the setup needed. So in general speaking, and this is not particularly pertaining to this flow, in general, whenever you're creating a delivery document in S4, it should be mapped with a delivery document type in EWM side, and then there will be a outbound delivery document. Sorry, there will be a item type or item category in the outbound delivery document, and that also needs to be mapped to an item type in EWM side. So document type and item type are two things you need to map. So the first step what we did here is we first did the setup on S4 side to determine a specific delivery document type. I've not specifically shown this step to um, determine the item category in S4 side, because by default the setup is there, but if needed we can also take a look at that. So you can come to this configuration and you can check what is the delivery, the item category determined or going to be determined for your delivery document type in S4. So this is RL, and based on the item category group, it will determine the relevant one. Once this particular step is done, now let's go back to our purchase order. In the purchase order, once you have created the outbound delivery document, a particular tab will appear called as purchase order history tab. And so this set the information which we are talking about so far, it's pertaining to S4. So not specifically the EWM consultant is responsible for all this. It may be involved, but not necessarily that everything has to be done by EWM consultant. But so you can see in the purchase order history, there is a delivery document type, delivery document number, which is appearing over here. Now let's take a look at the delivery document type which system has utilized, and we have seen it in the shipping tab also. Now if we go to the item level, we can see the item category, which we have also seen in the configuration node. So the S4 setup is done. Now we will jump to EWM. Like I said, because even though it's a purchase order, it's a return PO wherein we want to pick the product and ship it out from the warehouse to vendor. We need a outbound delivery document type and then outbound item type. Now, how do we determine what would be the or should be the item type for this process? For that, click on the, since it is a goods issue process, come to outbound delivery. And since we are talking about the item type, click on this help. SAP has given the list of BC sets. So BC set is basically a tool through which you can, instead of doing the configuration yourself or creating a new item type, your system will do the setting for you. Now you can see that for return, SAP has given this one. So you have to go to SCPR20 transaction code and then enter this one, click on activate button, give the TR and save it. That's it. Once you'll do that, I have a separate recording for that. You can see the steps for SCPR20. So once you will do that, you will notice that system has introduced a new item type just for returns. In the log, you can see that. So this is the one which system has introduced, and I've copied it to create a new one to influence the stock removal strategy based on the WPT. Now, once the item type is there, make sure that the item type is allowed for OUTB document type. If there is a need to altogether create a new document type for return process to run specific reports or wave template, etc., to influence it, you can copy OUTB and create one, and then you have to come to this node to allow the item types for that particular document type. Once this setting is done, so right now what we have done is we have identified the document type and item type, but we still have to do the mapping between the S4 document type and item type and EWM. Come to interface, since it is the information is about interfacing, come to this node, go over here. So the document type which we saw earlier was RL, and you can see that it is mapped over here. So RL is used for return PO. RLL is used if you are initiating the return process from EWM via the PRDO transaction code. Similar setup for item type. Now this setup which we are looking at, it's not specifically for return. It is in common setup needed for whenever you're interfacing the document, delivery document, inbound delivery, whatever, between EWM and S4. For production, there is a specific node, separate node, which wherein you will also do the similar type of setup. So like I said, it's just a common setup, nothing to do specifically in particular for returns, but we still have to do it for returns as well. Now, once we have the outbound delivery, so the moment you got an outbound delivery, You need to pick, you need to pack, you need to ship it. There could be a TU. So once the outbound delivery is created, you have to follow the regular outbound delivery process. There is nothing unique about the return PO process. There can be one thing which I will talk about. So before that, let's take a look at the item type determined over here. Now suppose your picking location says CS, like the available for sale storage location. That is your picking location. But your stock for some reason is available in your receiving sloc and you want to allow picking of that stock. In that case, you will have to use stock determination group. So this is the item type. The next step would be, so there is another, few other steps are involved in the setup which I've ignored or I'm not showing here, particularly your stock removal strategy or your WPT determination, because those steps have to be done irrespective of any outbound process. Right? You can briefly touch upon that. So you can see that the process type is RTRN. If you go to the cross process setting, what I've done is I've created a new WPT by copying 2010 WPT. The activity in this one is still pick activity. Now use once that is defined, a new WPT, you can come to this particular node and based on OUTB and item type ORET, you can point it to a specific warehouse process type. Now against this process type, you can go to the goods issue node and define your stock removal strategy. So we'll just briefly touch upon it, because if you have a dedicated area in the warehouse from where you keep your return to vendor stock, then you can just create a stock removal strategy just for that. And since you have a unique WPT identified here, we can easily map it. So within this keyword or the stock removal strategy sequence, inside it you will assign the storage type from where you want to pick the stock, so that you are picking only the return to vendor stock, not the available for sale stock, because we are using the same storage location to keep the inventory for both. Now once this is done, create and save. Now depending upon if you have used a POSC, LOSC, it can be a lengthy process or it can be a complex process, but here we are just running a very basic and simple process of getting a outbound delivery created for return to vendor scenario, and then just running end-to-end process. We are not going into the POSC and LOSC process over here. Now, if you have done your resource management properly, then you will get a queue. And since it is not done in my case, I will mention the queue manually. Once the queue is mentioned, we will go to RF or the, assuming that we are processing on the RF. So once the picking and packing is done, we will post the goods issue, and that should conclude the process for return to vendor. Now, I was pointing to a scenario wherein you want to the storage location in your delivery is pointing to CS03, but you want to pick the stock which is in your receiving storage location CS02 in my example. Now, to achieve this requirement, you have to use the stock determination group, wherein we allow the stock type from which we can pick the stock. So when we created the warehouse task for this example, the stock type was F2. Now the receiving storage location has the stock type as F1. So if you want to do that, we have to use the stock determination group concept, and then in your material master or in the product master, you have to update it. So the stock type in your warehouse request or in delivery gets determined based on the storage location in your outbound delivery in S4, because that storage location is mapped to availability group, and within the availability group you have the stock types. Now, in this example, we had F2 as the stock type, but let's say we wanted to pick the stock which was still under F1. Now, so the goods issue still has to happen from CS03. So there should be a storage type in your process which should do the posting change process for F1 to F2 once you have picked it. Now, just to enable picking of F1 stock, this is what you need to do. Create the stock determination group and then come to this node for the specific activity type. Activity, you can maintain what is the allowed stock type. So F2 is your stock type which you want to which is there in your warehouse request, and F1 is the stock type value which is you're going to pick. So if you'll do this step and maintain RT in your or whatever stock determination group in your product master, then you will be able to pick the inventory from, let's say, storage from door or staging area, etc. But like I said, you still need to flip the the storage location for the F1 stock type to F2. So you should have in your process a storage type mapped with your 002 availability group, so that when you bring that stock over to that storage type, system will do a posting change, because the outbound delivery will only post the good issue if the stock is in available for sales storage location, referring particularly to my example. So you can see that 161 is posted and the inventory is sent out to the vendor. And you can see that goods movement tab, it's completed. You can check the document flow if needed. Now I've not used a TU etc in this, or LOSE or POC. There are separate videos. If you are interested, you can go through that to understand the setup. Thank you.